In the last lesson, we have discussed joints and how to create them, and the purpose of using joints inside Maya and how those can simulate the way the real human bones work, and so how they can be very effective and really awesome to rig and move characters and anything here inside Maya, because they are kind of simulate articulation points and use them to move objects around, and we can use them to skin and a lot of things here inside Maya. And in this lesson here, we will continue our discussion on bone objects. We'll start first by moving into the rigging menu here, and from the skeleton menu we'll create joints here. First, let's go and discuss something in the creation phase of joints. It is going to be highly recommended to create bone objects from orthographic views. Now, by orthographic views, I mean either the side, front, top or bottom. Okay, try to avoid as much creating joints here from the perspective view, because when creating bones from perspective view, we are not gonna be expecting where they are going to be created. It is gonna be really hard to judge. It might seem like we are creating them right in a good position, but sometimes this is not gonna happen. Let me show you. For example, I will create a sphere or a cylinder here to kind of simulate the leg of a character. I will use the scale tool here and scale that up in the y-axis. Not too much, just a little bit, something like this. Now let's say that, for example, I will create joints from the perspective view. I will go to skeleton and grab the create joints option. Now let's make sure that the shading here will turn the Xray joints so we can see the joints through the mesh. So this is going to be a very option to activate here. We can also find it right here, Xray joints. Make sure to activate that. And if you want to, you can turn the wireframe on shaded view here to see the wireframe of your object. Now, it might seem I will start by clicking right here and clicking here to create, for example, this bone here is going to simulate the thigh bone of a character, and this one here is going to simulate the chin and the knee bones. It might seem that this is right in the correct position from the perspective view. If I hit the enter key to finish up the creation process, let me turn around my viewport and you will see that yes, this is not the expected result that we were looking for. So from this view here, it seems like it is created correctly. However, if I turn around, no, this is not what we expected. And so this is why I have warned you to not create joint objects in the perspective view, because we can get some unpredictable locations here for our joint object. We are not going to get some expected result by doing so. So let me hit the delete key to delete my chain. And if I go to the orthographic view this time, now you can either press the space bar. If you press the space bar once, you will get few orthographic views here. Each orthographic view is labeled here. At the bottom, you can see here is the side, front, and the top. If you hover your mouse over a certain orthographic view and press the spacebar again, you will maximize that window, okay? And now you can see I'm in the side viewport. Again, if I go and hover my mouse over the top view and hit the spacebar again, I will this time maximize the top view. Another thing here, you can go, for example, to the perspective view and you can hold down the spacebar and left mouse button, and here you can choose the orthographic or the views that you want to switch into. In this case, let's say that we switch to the right view, okay? And now we can go in and grab the create joints. I can start creating my joints here, for example, just like we did previously. And this time, if I hit the enter key, let's hold down the spacebar again and left mouse button. This time we'll switch back to the perspective view, and you can see this time here we have successfully made it. So we have placed the joints right at the exact center. You can see now we have got what we want. So this is placed correctly in the scene, and we didn't get that awkward, unpredictable results that we got using the perspective view creation. Okay, so this looks a lot cleaner and much more predictable. So this is why I have told you to create joints in orthographic views. Now, joints here in Maya, if I go, for example, to you can see now the manipulator is kind of matching the manipulator we have right down here. So it is reoriented here to the space or the world orientation, and you can know that if you hold down the W key on your keyboard and the left mouse button, and you can see, yes, it is reoriented to match the world space or the world orientation. If I go in and switch that to the object mode, you can see now I'm getting another different orientation. Now the gizmo here, the move gizmo, is reoriented to match the orientation of my joints here, and this can be really useful because this way here we know how each joint is being reoriented, and this is really crucial when it comes to rigging. So you can see that now the x-axis is pointing toward the next joint, and this is the same here. The x-axis is also pointing toward the last child here. Now you can see that the last child here is kind of not matching with the orientation of its parent, and the reason why this is happening is because of its orientation. You can see if I go to the attributes editor by hitting the Control A on my keyboard, or if I go to the edit and grab the attribute editor from here, you can see if I select the joint and go under the joint section, here is the joint orient channel. If I zero this out, look what's going to happen. The joint will match its parent. Okay, so there will be no offset at all. It is gonna be completely matched to its parent, in this case this joint here. Okay, the joint orient option here or feature inside Maya is also very important when it comes time to cleaning up the joints, because if I go back to the channel box here by closing out the attributes editor, you want to try to keep the rotation values of your joints as clean as possible. And so when reorienting your joints, for example, to fit within the model that you want to rig, you want to avoid doing that here from the rotation, because let's say, for example, that this cylinder here is, for example, tilted this way here. Let me go in and, for example, move that here in the world space so that I can move that here straight to the side. Okay, and let's say that I want this joint here to match this angle of my leg mesh here. This is kind of simulating the leg, and so we want this here to fit within the leg. If you go in and start doing this from the rotation channels here, this is not very good, because it might seem that you are actually doing it. So this is the very intuitive way to do it if you're just starting out. However, this is not very recommended, because think of this for a moment. When we are going to start animating, it might come time that we bake the animation to the skeleton level, and so we want to start with a clean bone objects here to kind of read the animation much more accurately and get clean animation. This is why we always want to have clean joints here, especially the rotation fields here when rigging. Okay, and so doing this from the rotation channel is not very convenient. The other way to do it, which is the convenient and the optimal way, is by going to the attribute editor and using the joint orient. So the joint orient will do the same thing here. I can use the control key and middle mouse drag, and you can see I'm able to reorient my joint without affecting the rotation fields, which is really nice. I can now keep my joints clean and rotate this however I would like. Here's the X, the Y, and Z axis, and I can tilt this, for example. I can reorient this here to kind of match the position of the angle of my cylinder here. I can now move this here in the x-axis, and you can see I have managed now to fit my joint here within the leg cylinder here. Okay, so this is a much cleaner way to reorient the joints instead of using the rotation key. Now there is a nice little trick that you can use, for example, to simplify the process a little bit more, and that by using the rotation key here, for example, let's say I'm rotating this here, so this is, let me undo back a few times, so we will use this time the fields here, so we will use the normal gizmo here and rotate the joint here to fit within the mesh. Okay, and we will use the move tool here to translate this a bit to the side, and you can see now this is not a really good joint to have because here's some messy values that we want to avoid. Now if you go in and select the mesh and use the freeze transformations here, all that values that were here, especially in the rotation fields, again the rotation fields are what matters here, so we want to keep these clean. Now all those transformations, when we have gone ahead and freeze the transformations of our joints, all of those values have been transmitted to the joint orient channels. Okay, so now you can see we have cleaned up the rotation fields here, and all those values, when we have applied that freeze transformations on the joints, were all transmitted to the joint orient channel. So this is a really cool trick that you can use to speed up the process and simplify it a little bit, especially when reorienting your joints around. So this is all there is to it for the joints for this level here. So this is going to be very important to understand now, because when we start moving and digging a lot deeper in the course, we're going to be using all of these techniques that I have showed you now to create some sophisticated setups for our character.